You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right, well, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
And we're your hosts for this show. So, it's been enough stuff going on in the whole Obi Wan series that we thought, you know what, might be a good time to revisit it. Now, we did just see the trailer a couple of weeks ago, but there have been some things that have been coming out, actually about all the shows, not just Obi-Wan, but being that Obi-Wan is the one that's going to be premiering in a little over a month, we figured, hey, this would be a good time to maybe start talking a little bit about the Obi-Wan. Now, of course, you may have noticed we're not live today. However, we are doing this as a YouTube premiere, so we should be able to chat with you guys live as this is going on. It's just circumstances were such that we actually couldn't be live tonight, so we decided to actually pre-record the show for you guys so we don't miss our usual Friday night Star Wars discussions that we've come to love so much. So,
absolutely.
What do we got with this whole Obi-Wan update?
Yeah, man. I mean, there's a lot of things cooking with Obi-Wan.
Besides Anakin?
A lot of different...
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's so wrong.
It really is, but...
man, but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on with Obi-Wan, a lot of cool updates. First of all, a lot of people were kind of wondering, like, how is this show, really set up? How's it different from Boba Fett versus Mandalorian and things of that nature? Because, that's kind of been the comparison now, that we're starting to have this live action series type thing. Those have been like the shows that we've gotten. So this is not being a bounty hunter-esque, so to speak, story. A lot of people are kind of wondering. So this particular, just to kind of recap for a lot of people who may not know, but this is only a 6-episode series. It's a limited series, only 6 episodes, roughly an hour long. And the reason why that's so pertinent is because, at the beginning, and this is something, I just kind of read, which we kind of figured anyway, but it's good to have this confirmation. But Ewan McGregor pretty much says that, Obi-Wan is kind of like in this really broken, kind of sunken place. You can even tell, even in the trailer, the war, we lost it and everything like that. So you can kind of feel that grim state of mind that he's in. And the reason why I'm bringing up those 2 points as far as where Obi-Wan is at this point and the fact that it's only 6 episodes is because we don't want to see what happened like we saw in Last Jedi with Luke, where he spent majority of the thing like in this whole grumpy, saddened place, and then we don't get enough of like, okay, like when does he snap out of it? Because you don't have that much time. You only got 6 episodes. So that's one of those things too. It's like, well, I wonder what's going to change that tide for him. So that's one. Of course, he's there on Tatooine to watch over Luke. Now, from what I've read, the start of it is on Tatooine, but it's not going to stay there at all. I mean, we already kind of saw that one place, Daya, which is kind of looks like Hong Kong a little bit. That's a big place that they're going to, venture off to. But the crux of it all is kind of him watching over Luke. But he keeps getting kind of interrupted because these Inquisitors are kind of looking for him. So he's kind of has to take kind of like sabbaticals and trying to draw himself away from Luke because you don't want them to kind of pick up on Luke's scent pretty much like, hey, he's kind of protecting this person. Why? Who is this kid? Oh, you find out his name is Luke Skywalker. Yeah, the cover's blown.
Yeah.
So I can kind of see we already can kind of start to see, where the story is kind of heading.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that it's funny that you bring it up because I really never locked onto the fact that the only 2 live action shows that we've had so far have focused on bounty hunters. And I think some of that is because the Ahsoka show has been more or less in our purview for a long time. The Andor show has been also floating around out there. So even though we have yet to see the premiere of these 2 shows, knowing that they're out there, I never really locked onto the fact that the only thing that we've had that's been released is these bounty hunter shows. And so obviously the Obi Wan series is going to be the first show that we get. It's a little bit different of a tone, not just in the fact that it's only 6 episodes, but like you said, it's focusing on a completely different era, first of all. And secondly, it just by the nature of the characters and everything else, it's going to take on a different feel, which is amazing. Because when you really stop and think about it, I mean, other than a couple of the films that more or less touched on it, this is the first one now that's going to take place in that very fertile playground that they've been playing in for years in live action, which of course is in between episodes 3 and 4. The first TV series, non-animated, that's going to take place during that time period. So I think it's going to be really interesting as far as that goes. And, that's not a bad idea. I mean, we could do that, right? We can actually take these things, point by point, because there's like maybe 3 or 4 updates that we have that we can share with you, at least at this point. And, I mean, if it becomes necessary, there might be a part 2 to this, where it's kind of like even more Obi Wan Kenobi updates, right? But right now, we have about 3 or 4 that we feel are pretty significant that we thought would be a really good discussion topic for not only us, but you guys as well. And so, if you guys are enjoying this content at all, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, hit the notification bell, because of course it helps the channel. And, hopefully you're chatting along live with us, but, there's always a comment section. So let us know, once we hit on some of these updates, let us know what you guys are thinking of these updates. So, yeah, I think that this is definitely something that is going to be interesting, because I think one of the biggest fears was that this was going to take place predominantly on Tatooine. I remember that was one of your big criticisms when this was still a possible film, or maybe a trilogy or something, where it's like, okay, I don't really know if I really want to see Obi-Wan the babysitter for 3 movies, that's understandable. But it really does make sense, because the other thing, too, is you don't want to go too far the other way, where it's kind of like, okay, if this guy's like off on a bunch of adventures or something, it's kind of like, well, come on, man, you're gonna draw the attention of the Empire after a certain point, and then that wouldn't necessarily jibe well with Episode 4, because one of the things I found interesting in Episode 4, even back when that was the only one that came out, because in the beginning of that movie, they pretty well established that not only are the Jedi pretty much extinct, but they're more or less hunted. It's kind of like they have to more or less hide. I mean, obviously, we didn't have as much of the story back then as we do now, but there was definitely that bit of information was there. So in the cantina scene, when Kenobi just busts out his lightsaber, which right away, who has those but Jedi, basically? Unless you get him on the black market or something. But the point is, he was risking a lot by drawing his lightsaber and doing that in a crowded bar full of, let's just say, less than desirable people. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, absolutely.
You can't have him, and that was risky, right? So you can't have him just going off and, going on all these crazy adventures. So they do have to pretty much, like the Jedi themselves, really achieve some sort of a balance between the two, where it's smart for them to, if you got a lot of people looking for them, hey, maybe I ought to get off planet for a little bit, draw attention away, so they don't really know why I'm here. But at the same time, yeah, you gotta, you can't really get yourself in too much trouble. So I'm looking forward to seeing that, as well as, of course, some of these new locations, like you mentioned, Daya, which is sort of like a Hong Kong-like planet. I mean, there's going to be some familiar locations, and then there's also going to be some new locations that I think are going to be quite satisfying. All right, so now we could probably get into some of these updates too.
Yeah, but and just kind of to piggyback off what you were saying, because Ewan McGregor actually kind of spoke about one of the things that I was that actually caused great concern for me because I know you wanted to see this. Like out the gate, the moment you heard about this, you were like really excited about it. And I was like, do we really need an Obi-Wan thing? I mean, like for what? Like, but even Ewan McGregor said, you know, that he always felt like there was a story that could be that needed to be told between this. And that's the thing I really would love to see. Like, okay, well, what is this big story that everybody thinks that needs to really truly be told? Especially when you know, have the Vader confrontation now that we're supposed to get. You know, I just got to see how that goes. So,
Well, now
you know,
that's a good point. I had to see that play out because, as you know, right from the get-go when they announced that, I was a little skeptical about that. You know, I was one of those people that, you know, where I stood with this whole thing was, I think there's a lot of story that they could tell within this thing. I think that there's a lot that they can do. I think that there's some really interesting things that they can explore, whether it be in a movie, a trilogy, or, you know, even a series, which is what we're end up getting. However, that said, it's one of those things where, to go along with what you're saying, yeah, but I wonder what that story is. And that's the problem. It's so vague that you can, there's a lot of room. I mean, that's the exciting part, is that there's a lot of directions they can go, but then there's also a lot of ways they can screw the whole thing up. And then, as you know, one of the problems with Star Wars is that once it's burned into canon, now you're trapped. You know, it's like, oh, now we got this really stupid thing that we have to deal with, and now everybody has to write around it, when really you just want to, you know, have a do-over. So it does sound like they have been really careful and that they understood this and that they've crafted a really good story. So we'll just have to see, you know, where that takes us. Because, like, you know, like you said, with the whole Vader battle, I am curious on how they're going to do that.
Yeah, definitely. So we would definitely have to. That's definitely one of the main parts that we're definitely all going to be waiting for in anticipation. You know, watching this basically 6 weeks of Obi-Wan.
Yeah.
So the next thing I want to bring up is Forlom. So that's it's a bounty hunter that's actually been, might actually make it into this particular series. And you know, a lot of people, you know, there's a lot of bounty hunters will come to grow and love. Bosk, you know, IG-88. A lot of people might be familiar with those, particular Dengar. So you know, these are all bounty hunters that, and you know, you kind of wonder. We haven't seen them in Mandalorian, so I wonder if they will pop up. You know, because they definitely were around because we saw them in Empire. So you got to wonder if they're actually going to be employed to, you know, hunting down Kenobi as well, along with these Inquisitors, which we'll get to momentarily. But Forlom might be in it. So what do you think about that?
Well, and, you know, I probably should have created some, you know, separate graphics to sort of go along with all these updates because, you know, while we got this really nice picture of Obi-Wan peering around a corner or something, you know, it's kind of like a general type of a thing. Some of this stuff could warrant maybe some additional visual aid, let's say. Like, for instance, I say Forlom. I guarantee you, like, 85% of the audience is going, who? And, you know, that's easy to do because he does play in that scene in Empire when Vader is hiring the bunch of bounty hunters to, you know, track down the Millennium Falcon. But there's some that were more obvious, right? Boba Fett, Bosk, even IG-88, Dengar, Forlom. Those guys were there, but they were kind of in the background and they weren't really heavily featured. And I mean, that whole scene is like maybe 2 or 3 minutes of screen time. So I could understand some people maybe not, you know, just going, oh, awesome, Forlom's going to make an appearance? Really, it's more like, who? It's like, yay, whoever you are, you know, that kind of thing. And I think that it's one of those things where even in the expanded universe, the old expanded universe, which of course is now Legends, they, you know, it's been one of those things that they haven't done a whole lot with Forlom. I mean, you got a couple of stories like with IG-88. You got, obviously, Boba Fett himself played into a lot of post-Return of the Jedi stories where the expanded universe is concerned. Even Bosk, even Dengar. You know, really, I mean, 4-LOM, I think he was there. And honestly, I think there was a recent... And I want to say there was a recent comic series. In fact, even the War of the Bounty Hunters series, I think there was one-off issue that was like 4-LOM and one of the other guys. So
yeah, and
go ahead.
I was just gonna say no. 4-LOM is kind of like the one with the insect-looking head.
Yeah,
that's 4-LOM. If you guys,
Yeah, for those who don't really, are like, I still don't know who he is.
Know who he is, right?
I mean, it's kind of like, and hey, if all else fails, you can always obviously Google it, but I mean, hey, maybe this would be a good time to rewatch The Empire Strikes Back, right? And, maybe treat yourself to that and watch that scene again and blink a couple of times and try not to miss 4-LOM. Yeah. It's...
You ever wonder, like, this is when we're talking about bounty hunters. You ever, because, spoiler alert, in Book of Boba Fett, we were all really happy to see, like, the live action version of Cad Bane. And man, and I get it, of course. I mean, I know, like, in reality, like, Cad Bane hadn't been created yet. So that's why he wasn't on the ship with Vader and them. But if he had been, do you think he would have been on that ship?
Oh, yeah. Because the idea at the time was, we were creating all the, or not creating, we were hiring all the top bounty hunters. Now, there's a couple of different ways you can look at it, too. I mean, if you want to hit an in-universe thing, there was a point where I think Cad Bane had somewhat of a, not really a falling out, but he wasn't really doing as much for the Empire, and so there is that possibility. But yeah, the reality is, Lucas needed to create a bunch of bounty hunters that were really cool and were supposedly the top. But, once again, one of the things when a franchise starts to age, you're going 30, 40 years in, and you start having to create more characters, it's going to be a thing to where when you start to look at the whole franchise as a totality, you start to go, well, we've just created a few characters that were cooler than some of these other guys. Now, on one hand, it's cool that they didn't create anybody cooler than Boba Fett or even Bosk, but sure, I would rather see Cad Bane in there than 4-LOM. I mean, but it would fit, right? I mean,
yeah, definitely. But see, that's the thing, though, too, is kind of like, that's the problem when you're creating and adding these characters and you bring them into live action, is because, okay, yes, you could say Cad Bane, and if you kept him in the more of the prequel era, fine, because that war went on for like an extended period of time, and we only saw like parts of it as far as Revenge of the Sith and Attack of the Clones. We only saw like a snippet. That's why we love the Clone Wars and animation so much, because it covered way more ground, explore more, and that's what we got Cad Bane, right? But then now when you try to bring him in post Return of the Jedi now, though, and you have him in Book of Boba Fett, I have to say, well, why wasn't he on the ship then? Because if he was still around, if he's still one of the top bounty hunters, you know what I mean? So you kind of trap yourself once again.
Yeah, no, that's actually a really good point, is the fact that once you do that, same thing even on the flip side, you bring Ahsoka back in, because up until then, you would have assumed that, well, maybe Ahsoka died at some point during the original trilogy. You're bringing these people in like, I don't know, 6 years after Return of the Jedi. Well, now those questions start to come up. I mean, even if I were Luke himself, if I were Luke and it's like, oh, great, you were my father's Padawan and you kind of knew him, and that's really cool. And of course, I do have some questions about that. But first, I'd like to know, where were you? Could have used your help against the Emperor. It's kind of like, and then I would have tried to go back to, summon Yoda's Force Ghost and just been like, okay, man, you're talking about how I'm the last hope for all the... How many more of these people are running around here that I could have maybe, formed a little bit of a team and gone in.
Well, yeah, I think, I mean, and there's ways I believe in universe you could kind of address that, is because one, of course, everybody was in the hiding, and technically Ahsoka isn't a Jedi anymore. So, you can have that plausible deniability in a way with her particular character. But I
Well,
definitely
and
get
you
what you're
do.
saying, though.
Well, I was just gonna say you're actually right. And the other in-universe thing that you could do is that Yoda would have been like, "Look, Luke had to face his father. That was his trial, right, to
I would
become a
say, yeah, that was
Jedi."
his destiny. Yeah,
Yeah, so I
it's a
mean, he
destiny
couldn't.
thing.
Yeah, so I mean, he couldn't. They're not gonna like. Yeah, and here's like 10 other Jedi to help you. But I mean, that's true. She technically wasn't, and she was in hiding and all that stuff. But
Hmm.
I'm just saying, she obviously sought him out later on. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of like, but then
Well, I think
again,
the empire's down now, so you have that freedom,
yeah.
and
Not to
that's
mention the
another
fact that he
cool
had the
thing.
reputation too. So that's
Hmm.
yeah. Those are all good points.
Now, the next thing is one of the main villains. So, for those of you who've seen the trailer, you see this stunning African American woman, the name of Moses Ingram. She's flipping around, and she's got the crimson lightsaber. And of course, everybody wants to know, like, what's her deal? Well, she plays a character of Reva, the Inquisitor, and apparently she's kind of been one of the main ones that's been sent to hunt down Obi-Wan.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently she's quite formidable. So she kind of, I wonder if she's on that kind of Asajj Ventress level. You kind of have to kind of wonder, like, okay, as far as skill set, because she's an Inquisitor. Asajj was more of a assassin. Ranking wise, how does that go?
Right, because neither one of them were actually Sith.
Exactly.
So it's kind of like, yeah, where do they
Yeah, we know
fall? And that's
Acolyte, but do you become
sure.
Acolyte and Inquisitor, or
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't.
are you Inquisitor first and then you become an Acolyte? Like, I don't, I
Well,
mean, it's
now offhand, I'm gonna say that Asajj would be more powerful, only because the Inquisitors, if I remember correctly, don't really have any Force powers. They can sense the Force. They can. They're really more. They almost have like the combat skills of a Jedi or a Sith, but not necessarily the Force powers.
well, we saw that in Rebels. They do have Force ability
Yeah, but I don't know if
because
how
they.
strong it is though. Like it's supposed to be. I always thought it was like just enough. I mean, I guess they'd have to have a decent amount in order to go up against Jedi, but
Hmm.
it's almost like I mean, I don't know. I guess the best way you could describe it would almost be like a special forces thing. You have the Green Berets versus the Navy SEALs, let's say. They're
Hmm.
kind of sort of the same level. They're just different branches. And maybe that's, Asajj being more of an acolyte versus an inquisitor. Maybe the skill set is the same, just different branches of Sithdom. I mean, I guess it's about the best way you could put it,
But here's something and this kind of dawned on me. So the only reason why really Asajj really was an assassin is because of the Ruler 2, because you already had Dooku, who was the apprentice to
Mm-hmm.
Palpatine, so, or Sidious. So for Asajj to be around, you know she couldn't have the Sith title.
Right.
However, so they gave her an assassin. But that makes me think that is the difference between the Inquisitor and like an Asajj just the fact that they have a master. Because it seems like the Inquisitors really don't have. I've never seen them with an actual like Sith Lord as a master. I mean, they
Well,
have it like Vader. Vader kind of commissions them to
yeah.
do so, but as far as like training and really teaching them how to deal with stuff, like what I mean, like I don't know.
And Vader basically supposedly did that too. He trained them. But again, it's enough to just, I guess, get the job done. Because I mean, if you really stop and think about it, if you go back and rewatch a lot of the Clone Wars, which is mainly
Mhm.
where you see Asajj, I mean, she's going up against Anakin, and sometimes Anakin and Obi-Wan simultaneously. or
Yeah,
Anakin
and she's holding
and
her own.
Ahsoka. Yeah, and she's more than holding her own. I mean, she pretty much almost beats Anakin several times. So I mean, if it's basically like who's more powerful, an Inquisitor or her? I mean, I'm gonna give the edge to her without question. I mean, the only one that might even have a chance against her would be the Grand Inquisitor. But
Right.
even that, I don't know, man. I think Asajj takes them all out.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, especially when you have, and that's what I mean by like the master thing, because I think your master, of course, is the most kind of like one of the top powerful, force users. So, you got Palpatine, and Dooku was very powerful because one, he used to be a former Jedi. He trained under Master Yoda at that. So he's had two of the most powerful on both sides train him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you got to look at that, and maybe that's why Asajj was so good, because he was able to give her the best of both worlds in the sense.
Yeah, well, the thing that was
But
really kind of weird to me, though, is the fact that, okay, so when Vader, when he was trying to train a bunch of people, obviously, to help him defeat the Emperor, and maybe that's the answer. Because I always thought it was weird that Palpatine not only knew about Asajj, but basically was like, oh, Dooku, you need to do this? Well, I'll get Ventress to do it. Like, I mean, talk about being out in the open. I mean, Dooku's openly training her in the Sith ways and all that stuff, and Palpatine's like, yeah, all right, whatever. It's not like he's even. I mean, granted, I just think it's funny because Vader's all trying to do it in secret and everything else.
Yeah, I think it's just, and I think it's just a style thing too. I think with Dooku, you're looking at his whole thing. One, he's older, so he kind of understands things a little bit differently. And it was like, I think Dooku made his out of a choice. I think he just saw the ways that things were going. He was just like, yeah, this is just the better way, and I crave this type of power. Where Anakin, his thing was kind of more like out of necessity. Like he was kind of like, it was circumstantial, I guess that's the best way to put it, where he was kind of caught in between a rock and a hard place, and he had to make that choice, because it was either like, okay, either I kill Palpatine and I don't learn how to save the one I love, or I have to stop my former master Mace Windu from killing Palpatine. But then that means I've turned my back to the whole Jedi because of my own selfishness and greed, which is the path to the dark side. You see what I'm saying? Like, it's, whereas I think Dooku was just kind of like, he's more of an idealist, as they said. He was like, you know what? This just makes more sense politically, and I can gain power more in this sector. And it was more from a legal standpoint.
Right. They had different reasons. I mean, they basically led to the same place. But I think that there's another reason that we're overlooking that's probably the biggest reason. And that's because of the political climate. Because during the time of Dooku, Dooku was sort of like the face of the Separatists.
Yeah. Yep.
And so it would make sense that he would have like a sort of like an underling type of a thing. And so I think that it basically served Palpatine's purpose. Yeah. It was kind of like, okay, well, fine, you can have her train her to do whatever. And then it's kind of like, when the time's done, fine. Oops. I unplugged my light. Hold on. I'll get it. There we go.
There it is.
All right, there it is. So I gotta stop kicking that, man. It's definitely a bad thing to do, is kicking your lights. But yeah, I think that that's definitely why, probably more so than any other reason. I think that that's why that probably happened.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good assumption. Also, while we're talking about Inquisitors, so we talked about Reva, played by Moses Ingram, but also Sun Kang, who is from the Fast and Furious movies. He plays Han from the Fast and Furious series. That's what most people know him from. And he's actually playing an Inquisitor as well.
Yeah, now we haven't seen him yet, right?
No, we haven't seen his character yet.
Yeah.
Unless they doctored him up or something like that, where we
either that or it was kind of like a blip. I'm sure there's somebody that went through that thing frame by frame. And by the way, while we're talking about this, we keep referencing the Obi Wan trailer. Like I said at the beginning of the show, we did do a full-blown reaction video to that. So once this video's done, don't touch anything yet. Wait till this is done. You're getting toward the end. We're getting there. We only have like 1 or 2 more updates. Once this is done, then you can go back, or you can pause this video, go back, check out our Obi-Wan reaction video if you haven't had a chance to see the Obi-Wan trailer, especially. That would be a good thing to do, and then come back and watch the rest of this. Because there's a lot of things in that Obi-Wan trailer that really are falling into this whole update thing. And I think what it's doing is it's giving us some context and reference points. So as we learn, say, about Forlom coming in, or, Reva coming in, or the Grand Inquisitor, Han. Yep. Well, not Han, but
yeah. Han being the Grand Inquisitor. I mean, being an Inquisitor.
Yes. Most people, that's what like you said, most people know him as that character in Fast and Furious. So they said, Han, we need you.
No.
The real, I was going to say the real Han, but that was a character too. Yeah, we haven't seen him yet. So it will be interesting to see where he falls into this whole thing.
Yeah, I mean, and even in the trailer, I love the fact of hearing how the Inquisitors think. How they put, pretty much said, like, being a Jedi is like, having that itch that they can't help but scratch as far as getting involved and saving the day, and we'll use that to our advantage. And I'm like, man, that's just so brilliant. I mean, I just love.
Yeah, that was actually that whole line was just fantastic. And I mean, honestly,
absolutely,
it sets the tone, I think, for where this series is going, and it just shows you how really good the writing is in this thing. Right out the gate. Yeah, already. Just in that one line, it's like, oh, all right, and also it's a little bit different, right? We're seeing a little bit, I mean, even though, yes, we have seen the Inquisitors before, and yes, you could make the argument that these Inquisitors are pretty much acting like a live-action version of the Inquisitors from the Clone Wars and Rebels. Well, more so Rebels. See, now I'm saying
Rebels.
Yeah.
I know.
They are acting pretty much. The characterization is the same as in Rebels, but it's different in the live-action context than what we've seen from our traditional Sith Lords, or from a Moff Gideon, or from a Thrawn, or even a Tarkin. So I'm really excited to see, based on that line, exactly how they operate, how they think, how they approach hunting the Jedi. It's going to be, I think, a really cool ride.
Yeah, I mean, the strategy I would love to see of them trying to corral, and their whole thing is kind of like strength in numbers, as we always saw in Rebels. There was always like maybe 2 or 3 of them kind of corralling and kind of like converging on one particular Jedi to the point, and they just kind of overwhelmed them with such force or whatnot that they just fall. But as we all know, Obi-Wan's no slouch. Obi-Wan's pretty powerful, and we might get a chance to even see it. And I didn't even think about that, but I wonder if we're really going to see like how powerful Obi-Wan is, because we really haven't seen him at his zenith, if you really think about it.
No.
We kind of saw it in Revenge of the Sith. We see how but he's always been more of a tactician. He's been more kind of easygoing and kind of laid back in a way, but like we haven't really seen Obi. We've seen Yoda like at his full capacity when he's going against Palpatine, or when he was even going against his former Padawan Dooku. We've seen Luke kick some butt, but we haven't really seen a fully powerful Obi-Wan. And I wonder, because of everything that he had going on with losing Anakin to the dark side, that's weighing on him. And then on top of that, like now he has to watch over Luke and make sure that he stays safe. And if there's anything that threatens that, Obi-Wan doesn't like failure. So I can see Obi-Wan kind of like, not going dark, but just being a little bit more aggressive and assertive, I should say, in certain situations. Not all the time, but in certain situations. I would love to see, and maybe we'll get to see that even with his bout with Vader again.
Well, probably, but I'll tell you this. There's only one time where we saw a glimpse of Obi-Wan as probably at the zenith of his powers. Is that last scene in Rebels when he dispatched Maul so quickly. And I mean, if you just look at that, I mean, it was just vicious, man. I mean, it was like Maul came up on him, and the skill and everything that Obi-Wan displayed, you know, it kind of showed you. It was almost like that, you know, sort of friendly, laid-back dog, you know, but then you see it when it's going to attack something, you're like, whoa, that just came out of nowhere. That's basically what this is like to me. And that's the only time. And that's what I'm hoping we see, because that version of Obi-Wan is not terribly far from the version that we're going to see in this series.
Yeah, I mean, that is very true. You know, that whole Maul scene, which was actually kind of, wasn't there rumor that he was actually supposed to be in this and they replaced him with Vader?
Yeah. So that came out, I don't know, like a week ago or something, where one of the, I forgot even where the rumor started from, but it was basically like a Lucasfilm employee or something leaked where Maul was the original villain, and they were told to maybe think outside the box, and then somebody came up with the idea of the Inquisitors and Vader and all that stuff, which, see, and this is where I have mixed feelings on, because on one hand, that is very clever, and that fits very, very well into the story, right? I mean, when you start tying in, especially the period of Rebels, where we're seeing the Inquisitors all over the place, I mean, it would make sense that they would be hunting, and, you know, they might run across Obi-Wan, and Vader being the main villain. Again, Vader's around, Vader's, you know, powerful, he's kind of running things, he's basically, his main task, up until the Death Star is built, is to finish hunting the Jedi. So on the one hand, that's a perfectly valid thing. On the other hand, I can also see where Maul would actually make a really good villain too, because as we saw in Solo, a Star Wars story, which is taking place like right around the time as this series, Maul is fully in charge of Crimson Dawn. And that would actually make sense to start putting that out there. And then, of course, we see Maul coming up in Rebels as well, which takes place not too long after this series. So, I mean, both of them make a lot of sense to me. Now, of course, later on, I think it was like one of the writers or something of the series basically was like, no, you know, he was never really considered as the main villain. I mean, you know, who knows? But it is an interesting thing, and I think that it would have fit just as well. This is one of those things where I think maybe they went in the other direction, because Maul's been, let's face it, he's been pretty used as, you know. Yeah. I mean, it's so funny because, you know, whenever people say, well, you know, in case of emergency, break glass and it's Palpatine, I'd almost argue that it's Maul. Because, you know, they just, he literally is the Jason Voorhees of the Star Wars franchise. I mean, no matter what they do to this guy, he just keeps coming back. And, you know, it's amazing to me that they didn't find a way to resurrect him again. You know, because it's funny. I remember there was some like forum that I was reading. I think it's probably one of the Facebook groups I was on for Star Wars, and you know, somebody was like, "Well, I wonder, you know, if he can pop up in like Ahsoka or something." And somebody was like, "Oh, you idiot! Obi-Wan killed him, you know, at the end of Rebels." And I'm like, well, "Obi-Wan killed him at the end of Phantom Menace too, and a lot more definitively, by the way, than at the end of Rebels."
Definitely.
I mean, you know, and yet he came back to haunt, terrorize, or, you know, however you want to look at it, for how many ever more years. So, Yeah, I mean, I agree that at some point it's like, okay, man, I mean, this guy, you can't keep bringing this guy
You got
back. I mean, if you're going to do
right.
that, forget all this other stuff Palpatine's doing. You really wanted to learn how to resurrect yourself and do all that? Figure out what Maul's got going on over there.
I know, right?
Yeah, he's the guy you should be studying. I mean, forget all this other stuff. It's like, he's all like, oh, I got this Sith spirit and I have to go into all these other people. Really? Because Maul doesn't have to do that, and he's come back more times than you have.
Yep.
From worse, I might add. Yeah. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
Sure, they both fell down a shaft, but only one guy was cut in half.
You
like that?
There. I see what you did there.
Well,
all right. Smooth. But yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. I think Obi-Wan just is bursting with potential. I'm on board now, and especially I'm definitely on board because John Williams is actually doing the music for it. He's actually kind of crafting the.
Now is he just doing the theme?
The theme, at least the theme, yeah, for the show,
but
which is cool. Just
yeah,
but still, just knowing that John Williams is still, in the game, so to speak. I know there still haven't been confirmation. We still haven't heard if James Earl Jones is doing the voice of Vader yet, but I'm pretty much sure you almost have to. I mean, like,
why wouldn't you? I mean, unless he's secretly sick.
He loves to do.
Oh yeah.
Well, he loves to do it too.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching some interviews from years ago, and the whole CB radio thing that he used to do to people, he had to kind of stop doing it because it would freak people out. But I just thought that was just brilliant. I mean, that just shows you like how much he loved the character, because a lot of times, you get people like Alec Guinness or Harrison Ford, they kind of get grumpy and crotchety over their characters and they want them killed off or don't want to do anything, have anything to do with them anymore. But James Earl Jones loves Darth Vader. He loves playing that character. He loves, that. And I think that's one of the things that we all are looking forward to, when we see Obi-Wan. It's like, okay, we know he's got to face him again because, I mean, it's already been advertised heavily. So now we just got to see how that's going to play out.
Well, and I hope, one of the things that's really cool is that I remember one of the things that we were looking forward to the most in Rogue One is like, wow, we're going to get brand new Darth Vader scenes and we're going to get brand new Darth Vader lines, that go along with some of the other classic stuff. And it just, it's kind of crazy, but yeah. I mean, I had to admit there was some issues I had with the dialogue where I'm like, I don't really know if this is Vader or not, but still, it was so cool to see Vader back in live action. James Earl Jones doing that voice, giving us more iconic lines. And I got to think, if you're bringing back John Williams, I mean, unless something really crazy happened to James Earl Jones' voice or whatever, but look, he was just in the new Coming to America movie. And that was only, a year ago or something like that.
Yep.
So I think that would be a really cool thing, is to have him come back and, who knows, maybe for the last time, give us a few more classic Vader lines that we can add to the repertoire.
Absolutely. Yeah, man. I mean, Obi-Wan has been, like I said, full of stuff. We still haven't figured out yet with O'Shea Jackson Jr., Ice Cube Jr., basically. He's in this. We still don't know what his role is going to be. There's tons of
there's a gang of people. I mean, if you remember, we did once again, I mean, I'm not trying to get people to click off of the show or anything, but we did another show. I don't know. I remember when we did it, like at some point last year. Yeah, where we actually went over, I think it was in the fall, where we did the Obi-Wan cast. When they announced the Obi-Wan cast, we basically went through everybody, and then we speculated on whom they might be playing and stuff like that. So, yeah, and there was a gang of people on there. I mean, it was like this whole, it filled up this whole, like, Brady Bunch Zoom meeting looking, photo or whatever. And it really is. It's like you said, we've only gotten a handful of people that we saw in the trailer. So there's still quite a bit more where, we don't know who they're playing and I suspect it's going to be, the same kind of thing as, well, who's Carl Weathers playing? Oh, he's playing a guy named Kreef Karga. It's going to be that same kind of deal where they're probably playing some people who obviously are enhancing the storyline, but maybe they're more like supporting characters in a way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but again, I mean, Grief Karga is like an amazing character, actually. So,
oh yeah,
you know, I'm looking forward to more of those, maybe in this show as well.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, we just have to stay tuned. Like I said, you know, Kenobi premieres May 25th, 2022. Right there on Disney Plus. I think like I said, we're all chomping at the bit. These are some just the major updates that's just been kind of coming out as of late. I'm sure there'll be more, especially as we get more TV spots, maybe another trailer that will reveal a little bit more of the story, or we can see a little bit more of the characters revealed unto us. But so far, we're on a great start. It seems really cool. Deborah Chow seems like she really has a grasp on this, and Kathleen Kennedy is like, you know, gushing and in love with this, and there's been no, you know, oh, we're halting production on Obi-Wan, and
exactly.
Hasn't been anything crazy like that.
Deborah Chow's fired.
Yeah, exactly. She's out of here or whatever. So yeah, this really seems to be pretty quite promising, and I hope so for not just, you know, for us, but for the rest of you guys, you know, who are Star Wars fans.
Yes, we hope so for your sake.
Keeping all things Vader. That's what I'm talking about.
I have to. And look, I mean, the reality is, you know, to piggyback on what you're saying, as we often do for each other. Look, if we need to do a part 2 to this, we'll do a part 2 to this. It's like you said, I'm sure there's going to be, you know, we're only toward the end of March here, right? So by the end of April, maybe early to mid-May, it might warrant another show. It might warrant a part 3 as well. I mean, as long as there's... Look, this is a Star Wars discussion show, you know? So if there's some significant enough Obi-Wan news or something that has come out, or maybe it's a possible rumor or something like that that's worthy of any kind of a discussion, we're going to bring it to you guys. And of course, when the show does premiere, we're going to bring that to you guys too, because we'll do as we have done for all the recent shows. You know, if we did Visions, we're going to do Obi-Wan. I think that was a direct quote from you.
Yeah.
I think I was like, yeah, you know, we're gonna review Obi-Wan. We're like, dude, we reviewed Visions. Yeah, we're going to review Obi-Wan.
Obi-Wan.
See, what's up in the air is when they do a Visions season 2, it's going to be like out to drag Daryl kicking and screaming to do that one.
Man.
You're like,
yeah,
well, can't we just
force grab me or something?
Can we just do the whole, like, one show on maybe this season 2 and just, like, take them all at once?
Call it
good. Yeah. I mean, you know, we'll see. So we're definitely going to be reviewing the Obi-Wan series. So, yeah, there's a lot of exciting developments that are happening, as you guys can see. And, of course, again, you know, check out some of the other shows that we did. Like I said, a week or 2 ago, we did a reaction on the Obi-Wan trailer. You're going to want to check that out. At some point in the recent past, we actually did the whole cast and everything for Obi-Wan, because when that was released, that had a lot of good information in it. So there's actually been a lot of good Obi-Wan related shows that we've done, because there has been a lot, especially lately, that's come out on it. So you're not going to miss that. And of course, while you're there, hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button on this video, because it really does help the channel. It helps us bring more content to you. We do stream. We're doing a recorded show, but I'm saying we stream live most of the time. We do stream live every Friday at 8, every Monday at 8. So we got a lot of good discussion coming up. It's a Monday. We don't really know what we're talking about yet, do we?
Not yet, but it's definitely gonna be Star Wars.
Yeah, you know it's gonna be Star Wars, right?
So
hopefully, exactly. So hopefully, one or both of us have been chatting in with you guys, you know, all evening, and we can do this all again Monday night live for you guys, when we'll be talking, I'm sure, about some other exciting new thing that's happening in Star Wars. So until then, I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.